Yeah, so I think the platinum price, if any metal right now, I think is you could say is undervalued in this market, I think it's platinum. So I think at this particular juncture, economic picture certainly for the US looks pretty robust, and that is a supporting factor. The vehicle demand story we mentioned is a supporting factor. The X factor that's dragging platinum down a little bit at the moment is what's going on in China. And as we know, the Chinese economy has been stuttering this year. And really the big question on everybody's asking is, when are they going to stimulate?
Welcome to Technical Spider, your go-to channel for insightful discussions on diverse topics in finance and beyond. In this captivating video, we are thrilled to have Will Rhind as our expert guide. Join us as Will explores the fascinating world of platinum, uncovering its vital role in various industries and the factors that drive its demand. Discover the captivating story of platinum's substitution and its profound impact on the market. Now, let's dive into the video and listen to Will Rhind.
In the rush for new green technologies, and certainly from power sources, it's not just going to be a story about batteries, but we believe that hydrogen fuel cells are going to be a big part of that conversation as well. And there, platinum is used in a similar way to the way that it's used within vehicles, and it is a catalyst metal. So it's used in the catalyst that ultimately converts that hydrogen into electricity. And so we think that that's a big growth area. We're seeing a huge amount, if you look at in the US, industrial policy that is being put into place in terms of specifically Inflation Reduction Act around the amount of capital that's going to be spent on hydrogen technologies is significant and a big growth area for the future. Because the second element to that, in terms of second largest supplier or producer of platinum, is Russia. And as we all know, Russia has its own issues with regards to not just production, but in terms of the sanctions and everything surrounding the Russia-Ukraine war. Another point you made, Michelle, which is really important to get across, is that it's not just a straightforward demand platinum story from the auto industry itself. It's also a substitution story, meaning that automakers are choosing to substitute platinum, which is a lower priced metal per ounce than palladium, than what they've traditionally used, which is probably more palladium in industry. So we're seeing the effect of that platinum being used from the substitute. I think the substitute is not just about price, but it's clearly a moral issue as well, with automakers looking to try and get Russia out of their supply chain.
How much growing demand do you expect to come from this growing hydrogen sector? Hydrogen as a clean source of energy?
And that is probably the big question, Michelle, is really how to put a number on that. At the moment, it's still pretty small because that's still a nascent industry. But I think we have to be optimistic that could be a significant source of demand in the future. There's no reason to believe that hydrogen will not be in the mix in terms of alternative fuel sources, and therefore, as long as platinum stays relevant as a catalyst, we think that demand could be significant. It's the job of the chemists, frankly, to try and work out what the optimal mix is going to be. And there's a couple of factors at work, because clearly on the one hand, you want to try and use as little of the precious metal as you can because of its value, the high cost. You're always trying to optimize the cost. But at the same time, you have to meet emission standards. And so there's only so much you can do in terms of optimizing before it fails those emission standards. And the reason why we still have platinum, we still have palladium today, is because we haven't been able to get those out of the catalytic converter. In other words, find something better or something cheaper that not only allows the efficiency of that particular process, but allows it to meet those environmental standards. And it will be no different for hydrogen. As of right now, that is exactly what everybody's trying to work out, is how to make the best possible, catalyst for the fuel cell. Platinum works the best at the moment. Mm-hmm. It may or may not be the case in 20 years' time from now, but that is the story at the moment.
All right, so given these supply and demand factors that we just discussed, what is your outlook for the platinum price? I believe it's currently testing support at around the 905 level. What's your outlook then?
Yeah, so I think the platinum price, if any metal right now, I think is, you could say, is undervalued in this market, I think it's platinum. And we're testing now the March lows. I mean, platinum has been trading in quite a volatile range this year. Had a big burst into the first few months of this year, pulled all the way back in March, went up again, and now has pulled back again. So I think at this particular juncture, economic picture, certainly for the US, looks pretty robust, and that is a supporting factor. The vehicle demand story we mentioned is a supporting factor. The X factor that's dragging platinum down a little bit at the moment is what's going on in China. And as we know, the Chinese economy has been stuttering this year. And really the big question on everybody's asking is, when are they going to stimulate, or if they're going to stimulate? But I think we're now reaching a consensus. It's more, when are they going to stimulate? And clearly, given that market is so important for demand for all commodities more broadly, as soon as we get some sign that that's happening, I think that will provide a support. I think for platinum, we're looking at a price level higher than where we are today. I don't think it's sort of materially higher, but I think somewhere, could we get back to a couple of $100 higher than where we are today? I think so. If China starts to kick in, we continue to get the robust sort of economic data coming out of the US, I think we could see that by the end of the year. So we've got the US and China are the two major factors here, I think, that are driving demand and the macro picture as well. I think certainly for this year, I don't see that for this year. I know that's probably not the consensus view. I know that everybody seems to be calling for an imminent recession and has been since the beginning of this year, not just as a recession, but in some cases an outright crash or hard landing. I just don't see that at the moment. The data, specifically data coming out yesterday, I mean, even most surprising, even to me, was robust data from new home sales starting to pick up. And so I don't see where that catalyst is coming from right now. I think if we want to talk about recession, we have to talk about what the Fed does from now, and clearly, whether they over-egg the pudding, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, it's just a metal that we like. We have always liked. It's a metal that has been trading in a range really now for the last few years, and there are some good reasons for that. But we think that, finally, with the market in deficit, the electricity problems in South Africa, and the demand picture remaining robust, that if there's ever a chance for platinum now to go on a bit of a run, it's now. Well, like I said, I mean, a couple of $100, above where we are today by the end of the year, I don't think is unrealistic. Okay. But, this is a market where, like I said, there's variables in terms of what happens in China, as well as the US. Silver is a little bit more troubled, if that's the right word, because it really has to decouple from gold, I think, in order to go on a run here, and that's tough. Silver is just so correlated to the gold price, and typically, when the gold price does well, the silver price does well also, and vice versa. So we're in a market where the gold price is softening a little bit, so is silver, so are the other metals. And I think silver has hung in there quite nicely. But while the gold price is softening, it's difficult to find too many bullish things to say about silver. But clearly, I think from my perspective, there's always been concerns about the lack of supply in all of these precious metals, and silver's no different. So far, the counterbalance to the lack of supply arguments is that we've gotten very good at recycling, and so typically, when the prices go higher, you do get more metal coming on the market in the form of recycling, and that obviously acts as a counterbalance to particular resources. So yes, one of my overall super macro thesis for why I think we are in a super cycle for commodities is that we just have not invested the capex over the last 10 to 15 years in bringing more production online. And silver is no different to any of these other commodities, whether we're talking about copper, et cetera. We haven't invested in the production. And if we're really serious about decarbonization, like you said, we're really serious about sustainable technologies, using silver, using copper, using platinum in these new technologies, we're going to need more of that. And that will put pressure on supplies. And obviously, in 2030 or 2035, it's difficult to say exactly where we'll be, but you can be sure that we're going to need more supplies of these metals, and that's going to be the issue as to how do we get them.